I did a short video recently about peppernuts, how we like peppernuts and we make them, store them for a year and get them out for Christmas. And I had a really good response to that video, some memories of having peppernuts and some requests to share the recipe. So I decided the best way to do that is to just make a video of me putting some peppernuts together. So stick around and we'll go through the process. So let's get started. I've got my grandmother's recipe here handy with all the ingredients. Handwritten by my mother. She must have copied it from my grandmother. And it is all water stained and time worn. We're going to do the easy part first. We're going to do the dry ingredients. You always want to mix the dry ingredients together first. You don't want to put them into the wet mixture because then they don't distribute evenly. And the key to these cookies, to the pfeffernusse, they are a spice cookie, is all the spices you put in and how they work through the cookie. And that's part of the reason you leave them sit for a year. It really allows the flavor to work through the cookies. This recipe calls for 4 cups of flour up to 5. Well, what that means is you start out with 4 cups of flour to begin with. That's what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to sift it because this flour we buy in bulk, big bags of flour because we do a lot of baking. Oftentimes it's just a little bit lumpy. So I'm going to sift it, get the lumps out, makes it nice and fine. This is just an all-purpose flour that we buy. Comes in 50-pound bags actually that get divided up into 20, 25-pound bags for resale at the place that we get it. We have all kinds of really nice high-grade flours there. I like getting my flour there. Don't typically use flour from the supermarket. Okay, there's the flour. Now let's start putting in our spices. So, it's pretty easy. Half a teaspoon of salt. Not a whole lot of that goes in there. We'll just follow right down the list. And a whole teaspoon of baking soda. Put that off to the side so I don't put it in again. We need 2 full tablespoons of cinnamon. Alright, back to the teaspoon, and we need a teaspoon of allspice. I see I'm getting a little low on allspice. I have to pick some of that up. And we need a teaspoon of cardamom. We just picked some of that up recently. Pretty good shape there. Half a teaspoon of ground cloves. And about a half a teaspoon of pepper. I'm just going to eyeball that. There we go, about a half a teaspoon of pepper and a half a teaspoon of ground ginger. You can see there's a lot of spices in here. Now, this also requires some anise oil, and that goes into the wet mixture. I don't want to put it into this dry mixture. So, we will proceed to blend all of these spices together with the flour. And just want to do this till you can see that the color is distributed through here evenly. Make sure you pick the flour up off from the bottom. Look for pockets of flour. You want to get rid of those. You want spices mixed through all of it. Doesn't take a whole lot, but you just gotta pay attention, work your way around the side, pick the stuff up from the bottom, turn it over. Just typical dry mixing of ingredients. We're going to set this off to the side, and the next step will be to combine the wet ingredients. And for that, first thing we want to do is we've got a cup of sugar here. Get that in. And then it calls for a half a cup of shortening. Well, if you were born in 1876 like my grandmother and grew up in Germany and then here in Wisconsin, lived on a farm most of your life, that means lard. And we used a lot of lard when I was a kid on the farm. I always like to use lard for these older recipes because, well, that's what they used. There was no such thing as shortening back then other than using lard, and it does make a difference. You notice it. So we'll get that half a cup of lard in here. The first thing you want to do, I don't want to waste any of it here either, the first thing you want to do once you get that in there is blend those two things together before you add the other ingredients. I'm just going to take my spatula here and break that lard up a little bit, start working it into the sugar. Works pretty easy. You keep lard at room temperature, it stores for a long time. We used to just keep it in tins on the farm. Get that started, and I'm just going to use my hands now to blend that together. To make sure it is completely mixed. I suppose there are other more sophisticated ways you could do this, but this gets it done. And you make sure that all the sugar is worked into the lard. It's not too bad to get off your hands, really. Not like trying to work with bread dough. That's impossible to get off sometimes. With that done, I'm going to wash my hands off a little bit and we'll put the rest of the ingredients in. All I had to do was walk over to my sink full of warm soapy water that I always keep on hand when I'm baking or cooking. That way if I need to wash a cup out and use it again right away, I've got the hot water there ready to do that. Got the lard off my hands. Now we're going to add 2 eggs. I broke those into a separate bowl that way just in case you get a shell. It doesn't end up in your baking. And I just mix those lightly with a whisk. And we will pour that in. And we'll put our dry mixture in now. And then the final magic ingredient is 1 cup of molasses. Now it's not January yet, so I'm able to pour this. let's start mixing. I am going to blend this all together, and when we come back, we'll go on to the next step. I've started blending this, and I just realized I forgot to add the special magic ingredient, and that is a half a teaspoon of anise oil. I had just a half a teaspoon of that left. Sometimes these are called anise cookies. People call them that anise flavor in there. Had I run out, I also have pure anise extract. We use that. It's kind of the licorice flavor. I'm going to keep blending now. I have this pretty well started, and I'm going to get to a point where again I'm going to have to use my hands to finish blending all of this together. But you can get most of it done just using your spatula. I'm now down to the point where I still have little lumps and chunks of lard that need to be blended into this flour that I can't get with a spatula. So we'll get the rest of this off from here. And now we get to play in the dough. Fortunately, unlike making bread dough, and I make a lot of sourdough bread, when you add the water and you're using the sourdough starter, the gluten is always activated, and that really sticks to your hands. So it's a challenge sometimes when you first start out with bread dough, trying to get it off of your hands. But since there's no water in here, we haven't activated the gluten in the flour, so it works pretty easily, and the lard helps with the process of keeping it off of your hands. You can see I'm not really building anything up on here. Now my inclination would have been to use half regular sugar, half brown sugar in this, but the recipe's never called for brown sugar, so I'm making it true to the original recipe that was always used. I always find that brown sugar sometimes just adds more flavor to cookies or whatever you're making. And I can already smell all the seasonings coming through on this. It's really nice aroma. I see now that I have a nice even brown coloration throughout the dough. There are no more lumps in it. I'm going to get it out here. It won't stick to the counter because it has all that lard in it. Get it pushed together into a ball. And that's it for today. This will sit in the refrigerator now till tomorrow. You get really good and stiff. We'll take it out, and then we will move on to the process of making the cookies. Now comes the fun part. The dough sat overnight in the refrigerator to stiffen up. That just makes it easier to work with. We'll get this off to the side. Now what I like to do is just take a chunk of the dough off, do a little bit at a time, working right on the counter. We're going to just form this into a ball. To get it started, and then we're going to stretch it and roll it into basically a log. These are really easy to make, and that may not seem like a lot of dough there, but the way peppernuts or pffernüsse is made, you're going to start out with some really small pieces. I got a little too much dough there. You'll see it'll take several passes here to do this. Keep my dough together. I didn't need the 5 cups of flour, usually don't. 4 cups and you have dry enough mix here. Right, I've got a log here. I guess judging size, I would have to say that it's probably maybe the diameter of a nickel. May seem small, but they grow once you get them in the oven. You just take your knife and you're shooting for, as it says in the recipe, marble-sized pieces. As you can see, there's a great deal of precision involved in this operation. Now you take each one, take your hand, roll it in a ball, and just set them on the baking sheet. And on the baking sheet, I already have a pre-cut piece of parchment paper. My wife cuts those up in advance. She does a lot of baking, and it's just handy to have them ready to go. Cut to the size to fit into the baking sheet, or cookie sheets as we call them. So this is the process. A slow process. I guess if you've got kids you want to get involved in it, they might find this fun. They can get these made up in advance. Now I'm transferring them directly onto the cookie sheet rather than a plate or something else to have them ready to go. I'm going to continue this process until I have the cookie sheet full. I now have 2 cookie sheets full of pfeffernusse rolled out. It didn't take long once I got rolling, pardon the pun. So we're going to set these into preheated 350-degree oven. And I'm going to have my assistant set a timer. Alexa, set a timer for 10 minutes.
10 minutes, starting now.
And we will check on those. What I do then is have 2 more cookie sheets ready to go. So while those are baking, in those 10 minutes I can fill 2 more up and just rotate those in. Just keeps the process moving. The timer just went off. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, they are baked. Set a couple over here. And set another one here. I only had 1.5 trays ready to go, so just to keep moving, I'm going to put this one in. Set a timer again for 10 minutes. Let's get these off the tray. Now here's something else I've done for years. To cool cookies like this, I just take, and you see how nice this parchment paper works. Anyway, I take them and put them on an old grocery shopping bag that I cut and lay out on the counter. Works just perfect. Absorbs any grease from the cookies, gives them a nice smooth area to cool off on. And once they're cool, I can bunch them into a pile and put some more on. So let's get this other tray emptied here. And the aroma is just fantastic. You can really smell now the seasoning in here. And that is the process to make pfeffernusse, pepper nuts. I'll finish filling out this tray and swap that in. Get a couple more fill and just keep moving on the process here. That's all there is to it. So I hope you enjoyed this video on how to make pfeffernusse. It's really, really simple. And if you like them, you like them. I guess if you don't, you don't. I have run into some people that don't care for them. They do have a lot of spice to them. there you go. Something you can do for the Christmas holiday season. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please click like and consider subscribing to our channel. I'm looking forward to bringing you some more videos in the future. Thank you and take care.